Sundar Pichai received $226 million compensation, boosted by a triennial stock grant. I simply don't see what good this CEO has done. He's destroyed Google's reputation with developers, destroyed customer trust in Google products, done nothing to fix Google's reputation for terrible customer service, led Google to third place in cloud computing, and been thrashed by Microsoft Chat, putting Google's core business at risk. Why is this guy CEO?
Sundar became CEO at a time when Google needed a leader who could build consensus across different product areas. Sundar was the right person for this role. Unfortunately, Sundar is also relatively weak at setting a bold vision to ensure the company continues to grow and innovate, as Larry had done. So under Sundar, the company has slowly shifted from being innovative to being very risk-averse, incentivizing not making mistakes, maintaining the status quo, and focusing on cutting costs over creating new lasting value. The effect of these changes is finally becoming more apparent.
So to paraphrase, he is a bean counter.
I think he cares deeply about the company and its mission. He just lacks the ability to be a bold and decisive leader. This can be a good thing in some cases. He is good at building consensus, for example, but can also be harmful.
He has been CEO since 2015. Would it be a stretch to blame him for the current company culture of nurturing new products left and right, just to kill them off after 3-5 years?
They are making tons of money. That's what counts. Same for Balmer at Ms. Maybe they lost their magic, but they were printing money.
Over the past 4 years, GOOG's net income and earnings per share have fallen quite a bit. Revenue has been pretty flat. I don't get why Pichai is so well paid. Balmer actually did preside over some impressive growth when he was CEO of MSFT. Pichai has not.
Mainly cause no one smart wants that job. It's just mindless politics 24/7. It's left to the mindlessly ambitious or people, who are placeholders, to prevent the mindlessly ambitious from sitting in the chair. We have passed the point of all complexity, where the CEO does anything beyond ensuring no one totally insane takes over. There are a lot of such people who dying to charge you for every search query or email you send. Think Larry Ellison or Rupert Murdoch types taking over Google.
For $226 million, I bet my ass a ton of very smart people would want that job. Many, many, many.
Did he make them money?
The only thing he has done is not destroy the Google cache firehose. The advertising cache firehose is perhaps the only thing that matters at Google. But having been severely caned by Chat and left flat-footed on AI, I think it's reasonable to say even that firehose is now at risk.
One could argue he's ruined that too, because of all the scam ads they push on a daily basis.
It's really funny to read this over and over from so many people. You are saying Google can't match and surpass Chat. You know, Google, the people who invented the model architecture used by Chat, the people who wrote the first ML training frameworks, and the subsequent most popular one, the ones who designed hardware accelerators to minimize training and inference, the people with enough excess compute to probably train a model with even more parameters. Come on.
Google would still be making a ton of money even with a CEO that did nothing. For a $226 million compensation, we should be able to demand a bit more, don't you think?
Who is we in your comment?
He did pretty well with Android, I think.
Okay, credit where it's due. Android and YouTube are doing great.
None of which started during his reign, am I wrong?
Well, he hasn't ruined them. That's the standard we're talking here.
Under his leadership, 2015 to now, Google revenues have gone from $75 billion to $279 billion, a 272% increase. Google stock was a $30 share, and is now at $105 share, 250% increase. That's what he's done. Just in 2022, revenues were up $23 billion, so his cut was 1.2% of that.
And getting caught flat-footed against Microsoft and Adobe, but not as loudly, in the precise field alphabet, is supposedly the insurmountable leader. Remind me again how big co-CEOs assume all the risk.
What's even the risk? If the CEO of Google gets fired, he just ends up as the CEO of another Fortune 500 company. If he can't even land that role, he can just go around pocketing $50K event speaking fee. Of course, that's only if he doesn't want to degrade himself by taking on a VP-level role at another Fortune 500 company.
226 M50K tilde 4,000 events a year. Poor fellow couldn't pull that off.
Remind me again, how big co-CEOs assume all the risk. Does anyone seriously believe this? I see it all the time as a comeback against CEOs, but I don't think I've ever seen anyone arguing that they actually are the ones that assume all the risk.
Remind me again how big co-CEOs assume all the risk. I have never once heard anyone make this claim.
Reputational risk does affect the supply of viable CEO candidates. Here we are deriding Pichai for perceived Google failures, but it's far from the only factor. The main reason CEO total comp is so high in big companies is to align the CEO with the interests of shareholders, something the layoffs would likely also aligned with.
Guy has made 226 M in a year. He won't have to work another day in his life. What reputational risk are you talking about?
Comp doesn't have to be high to be aligned. The reason it is so high is because of the massive risk and uncertainty of replacing a CEO. There are thousands of people at Google who would be perfectly fine CEOs and be willing to do it for a small fraction of what Sundar Pichai costs. But how do you find them? Hiring is such an inexact process that there's a large chance that the guy you chose won't be one of those competent people. And a bad CEO at a company the size of Google can cost hundreds of billions of dollars. So this gives a competent CEO leverage to raise his comp to very high levels. When Pichai asks for $200 million, he knows that the board will give it to him, because it just makes financial sense. They're not going to risk hundreds of billions of dollars on a potential bad CEO, when they can pay their current CEO 0.1% of that to stay. Essentially, CEOs are able to hold the board hostage.
This explanation you've cooked up is basically just a fan fiction. Any CEO who tried to hold their board hostage would be saying goodbye to their job, and likely their career in short order. Pichai's salary is $2 million. The rest of his compensation is incentives. Almost all of his compensation comes from incentive packages designed to align his interests with the interests of shareholders. What I don't get about CEO compensations is, do they even work? Like, I get that you're a high-impact person and you should have the proper incentives to lead the company in the right direction, but do the crazy compensations actually achieve that? Like, is there any difference between $100 million and $200 million? Both of those numbers are way higher than anyone, and their children can use in their entire lifetimes. Why do you even care which sum you get? Does Sundar Pichai actually look at his paycheck and say, oh boy, I got $226 million instead of the measly $150 million zero I got last year. Hard work sure is paying off. I better keep at it. Zero. I made that number up.
The upper management at Google are so lucky that the company is filled with timid people who are averse to change and didn't unionize. Now they can safely siphon the profits for another several years until they inevitably drive the company into the ground when the ad revenue dries up, and they move to similar positions at other places with healthy revenue streams. And the rank-and-file Googlers will defend this because they think they caught God by the ankles with their $150K year salary that they feel they don't deserve because of their imposter syndrome.
You don't have the full picture. You're missing a lot of data. And the rank-and-file Googlers will defend this because they think they caught God by the ankles with their $150K year salary. That's closer to their intern salaries. Total comp is more like double or more. Much of the rank-and-file's total compensation is also in stock. Add to that if you wanted to, you can do the minimum and just coast. No one is going to unionize, and it's not for the reasons you've cited. Maybe you shouldn't comment on something you know barely anything about.
Maybe you shouldn't comment on something you know barely anything about. Very weak counterpoint, essentially ad personam, trying to insinuate my ignorance, telling me to shut up. Not impressive.
Can you define several years? Google's revenues are at all-time highs and still growing, albeit slowly. Seems pretty far from anything drying up.
I am from Denmark, where we have strong unions protecting our working class and lower middle class. That is a good thing. However, what is the benefit of ultra-high-income FAA&G employees unionizing?
One benefit is stronger labor protection from layoffs like these. Having labor be more powerful can also help when execs push for morally questionable projects. Lastly, FAA&G employees are working class.
If you're earning sky-high base comp plus stock plus benefits at these places, you're not working class. You are incredibly out of touch.
Same story at Meta, where people in the C-suite got very high bonus and equity refresher based on outstanding individual performance. You'd expect them to be somehow accountable. The common answer there was that they did well at their job and aren't responsible for decisions leading to the layoffs. And nobody is responsible. Basically, it was right to hire so many employees, good economic prospects, and then it was right to fire them. Bad economic prospect. This view is acceptable if you consider people are disposable and the human cost to be zero. Which of course is the case from the corporation point of view, since this human cost isn't tracked by any metrics meaningful for the company. These layoffs feel wrong. I know people who were devoting their life to their job, were working in very profitable companies, were exceeding expectation for their level, were working on project that was sold to them as critical by management, and they were fired overnight without notice, and some of them continue to lick us on LinkedIn on how great was their company. I know it's not a popular idea in American business-centered culture, but there should be restrictions as to why you can lay off employees.
While firing thousands. That's not the original title, just added by Op for drama. It's an editorialized title. Alphabet CEO's pay soars to $226 million on huge stock award. It's a Bloomberg article, not The Guardian.
While firing thousands. While correcting for the mistake of inflated bloat from recruiting. Industry-wide pattern is emerging useless hires.
If you ever have been in leadership interviews, then you will know that firing people is one of the quality one needs to evaluate or prove. This is just business as usual for these roles, and a lot of people shy away from these roles due to responsibilities, such as this.
He's compensate to maximize shareholder returns, not to keep people in a job. The people are employed for the same reason, and when their ROI is below the threshold, then you need to right the ship. This is what a CEO is partly there to do.
Which, while true, is a really shitty system, as evidenced by the headline. CEO received compensation for good cost-cutting measures. What am I missing here?
CEO made bad decisions that many other companies avoided. CEO panicked and fired thousands unprofessionally. CEO received record compensation.
CEO made bad decisions that many other companies avoided. Like what? Overhiring. Many other companies avoided. Like which big ones? Amazon, Microsoft, etc. CEO panicked. Sounds like hyperbole. Fired thousands unprofessionally. How do you fire thousands professionally? I thought ensuring market and shareholder satisfaction was the top priority for CEOs, and they get paid to make those unpopular decisions as when deemed fit.
All the fired Zeglers seem to praise their former employer on social media, so they seem to accept that they deserve to be fired. It's hard to be mad at the CEO when the people who lost their jobs displayed no anger.
Someone please call Jarul, so he can make sense of this man's salary.
This sounds like a comment on Reddit.